Now we will take a look at categories. So navigate down to company, categories, and up here on the top of the middle, you'll see there's a center area, category, and these are all the different categories that we're going to look at. So the purpose of this setup step, is that we are configuring the drop downs for each of these items to best meet your needs. So let's start with default items. Default items is an event management section that you can have turned on for your venue, or you can turn it off for your venue under venue configuration, under venue general section. And these are the purpose of this section is for the customer to say what they are bringing to the event. So really it's an accountability section where the customer is going to say, I'm bringing grandma's cake knife. So they put it on the list. Once that is delivered to the venue, it is then checked into the venue. So the day of the event, where's grandma's cake knife? You look at the items list. Oh, Sarah checked it in. Hey, Sarah, where did you put the knife? Or, where's grandma's cake knife? You look at the items section. Oh, it was never delivered. I'm sorry, it was never brought to the venue. So you know what to expect, what has been delivered, and just as importantly, what had not been delivered. So again, accountability for those items. You can create here a recommended items list. Things to give your customers an idea of items that they would be bringing to you. So you would go through and add anything additional or take off what you don't want people bringing. So if you don't allow confetti, even biodegradable, remove it from this list. Okay, so again, this is for the item section, things to put on the list for the customer to be bringing to the venue for the event. If you need to add a new tag, you simply hit the green new tag, add it in, type it in, and click the add button. Email. These are your email categories. So the email inbox in Sunnis is a shared box. So your entire team are going to be working from the singular inbox. Having categories is one of the multiple ways we support organization of that inbox. So when you send an email, you can assign a category to it. Therefore, when the customer writes back, it will be assigned the same category. So it helps you keep that box organized. All initial inquiries are automatically put under sales. So these are our defaults, but if there's any additional categories you want to add, please do. I typically see planning or operations added, and that's pretty much it, as we've covered most of them. Inquiry source. This is how the customer reaches out to you to start the inquiry process, to start communication with you. These are the topics or the inquiry sources that we can run reports on. So you want to make sure that you capture how people reach out to you. So if somebody reaches out via Bridebook, you'll put that on the inquiry of Bridebook. So you can see how many inquiries did we have last month from Bridebook. We can also see how many confirmations do we have from Bridebook. What is that conversion rate? You can also use the inquiry sources to apply to your external forms. So you can use just web form, but if you have different forms, you can have different inquiry sources. So you can actually monitor the performance of different forms. So maybe the performance of an inquiry form versus a brochure request form. Or you can monitor the performance of a specific campaign. So this is to make sure that you've captured the ways people reach out to you, delete what you don't need. Event labels. Event labels have a couple different purposes. First of all, this is the kind of a high level information, things you do not want to forget at any point during the planning process. So something like Asian wedding, or you could put in something like VN or access, VIP access if the bride or the groom is in a wheelchair, something you do not want to forget. I've seen package names put on here. So if you want to put on that they're on the platinum package or the diamond package, so you don't forget at any point. Let me show you where these pull through to make a little bit more sense. So in the events list, and they also apply to the inquiry list, when you have these blue items, these are labels, okay? And then if we look at my go-to test event, which you will get used to seeing a lot for this process, you can apply a label, and it's the blue item on top. So you see that there. You don't want to put tons of labels on an event, because if you suddenly have 8 blue labels, it kind of dilutes the messaging and you miss out. But it's a great way to get things you don't want to forget. You can also filter by labels. So when you're looking at your events list or your inquiry list, you can filter by labels. So that's where maybe assigning a staff owner of that event or that lead would be helpful. So back to categories and back to our event labels. So you can add staff names if you have staff ownership of an inquiry or staff ownership of an event. They can filter the event list down to their name and see their assigned events. So that's really the first purpose of event labels. And then the second purpose is your sales process, where they are, excuse me, on your particular sales journey. So we support the inquiry status, right? But the inquiry status is a huge status. A lot can happen within an inquiry. So we recommend adding your sales journey, the steps of your venue's journey to labels. So you know that, hey, we did a follow-up, or they have a viewing booked. So there's no need to follow up with them. We know that the viewing's been booked. You'll see them in a few days. Viewing attended. So maybe that's your priority, is following up with the people with the viewing attended, or viewing attended follow-up. So you know where they are in that inquiry. And then once they go to date on hold, of course, there's a status change. The statuses in here oftentimes correspond with a template that you'll send at that juncture on your sales journey, which we'll talk about more in the sales video. And then we have guest roles. When you're adding guests onto the guest list, you can assign a role, and this will give that guest VIP status. We have most of them on here. A few others that I sometimes see would be the day of alcohol contact or the day of emergency contact. But do keep in mind that a guest can only have one role. So that would be only applicable if the best man is not also the alcohol contact. Guest special requirements. These are things that you can accommodate for guests with special requirements. So if they say high chair, that implies that you're going to be providing a high chair. That you see the guest with a high chair, you see where they're seated, and instead of putting a chair at the table there, you'll be putting a high chair. You might want to add a toddler booster seat. If you have space for pram or wheelchair, that implies that you're accommodating for somebody in a wheelchair, or you're accommodating space for an infant that's in a pram. Other things I see added in addition to the toddler booster seat would be access to a breastfeeding or pump room if you offer it. And a few times I've seen people add in things like access to an electrical outlet for medical devices. So anything that you can provide as accommodation for guest special needs. And so add them in here and hit save. You do want to follow up that action by returning to your venue configurations under general and making sure that you have your specific requirements. Because you may have one venue that has booster chairs and another one that doesn't. So you just want to control that at the venue level as well. So returning to categories. Heard about us. So this is different from the inquiry source. The inquiry source was how they reached out to you. This is how they know about you. So it could be that they've been a guest. If you're a golf club, maybe they're a member. Or if you're a museum, maybe they're a member, board of directors. So anything where they would have learned about you. The linen color, this is implying that you're providing linen as part of your fees, and this is where they'll choose what color. You may only have one, so delete what you don't have. You may not provide linen, in which case delete them all so they're not an option. If you do provide linen, but it's always at cost, we'll manage that in the service section. Other venues are going to be your direct competitors. So when someone says that they're not going to be moving forward with you, great, thank you for letting us know. We just want to make sure that you pick the perfect spot. Do you mind sharing with me where you ended up booking? And if they tell you, which it's not going to be always, but if they do share it with you, you can capture that information so you can start reporting on where you're losing business to. But on this list, you want to have your direct competitors. You don't need to start listing out every single venue Wales or in the nation. And you certainly don't need to start listing out different destination venues in Greece. So you may want to identify the maybe 4 to 6 that you're really concerned about in your neck of the woods. And then you could say out of region, out of country, out of county. And you can even have destination weddings so that they are ended up going to France or ended up going to Greece. You just hit destination. And you can start watching trend lines. So if you start seeing that the line for, the old barn down the street is going up more aggressively than you were expecting, it's time to seek shop or figure out what they're doing to kind of stop the bleeding, if you will. Reasons not booked. This is why they said no. And again, we can run reports on this so we can start watching how these lines are trending. If you start seeing that the price line is going up, then maybe we need to relook at our pricing strategy. Again, you don't want to capture every single reason, but general statements to run through reporting. And last but not least, transaction categories. Transaction categories have 3 main purposes. This is where we associate taxes. So whenever we create a charge in Sunnis, you're going to associate it with a transaction category. These are general categories, so you don't want a category listed for every single thing you sell. So all food goes under food, all drinks go under, or all alcohol under alcohol. Services will include multitude of services, right? But this is where you're applying that tax rate. So I did, as an example, I have ceremony fees separately here, and I have accommodations, something that I've added. Then on the next section, we'll go to invoicing and we'll assign the tax rate. So if you do have services with different tax rates, but they both go under services, you could have 2 different service categories if that fits your needs. But it's where we're assigning those tax rates. That's number 1. Number 2 is we can use these for revenue reporting. So revenue reports and revenue forecasting. So when we're looking ahead for your events for next year, you can say, what is a forecasted revenue for alcohol, for food, for venue services? So what are those categories you want to be able to drill down on for those revenue reportings and revenue forecasting? And lastly, these are basically nominal codes. These are the categories that are pulled through on your invoices. So these are your different nominals that you'll use in Xero. And these are the categories that you will map to different nominal codes for Sage if you're using the Sage export, or the different categories are coming through on your financial records export if you're using other accounting software. So think of these as your nominal categories, but using names instead of codes. So that's it for your category section. So just take your time as you work through these, think about what's going to best fit your company, and they are applied to all of your venues.